Have you ever stood in an ancient forest surrounded by towering trees that have witnessed centuries pass by? It is a humbling experience. In these quiet moments, a profound question may arise, one that challenges our very place in the world. Do these magnificent living beings, these trees, have rights? This is not merely a poetic thought. It is the central question of a field called environmental ethics. This branch of philosophy asks us to consider our moral responsibilities not just to other people, but to the entire natural world. It invites us to look at the rivers, the mountains, the animals, and indeed the trees, and ask what we owe them. For much of human history, our ethical considerations have been limited to ourselves. We have debated our duties to family, community, and nation. But now, as we witness the profound impact of our actions on the planet, we are compelled to widen our moral circle. Environmental ethics pushes us to think beyond our own species. It forces us to confront the consequences of our consumption, our industry, and our way of life on the ecosystems that sustain us all. The question is no longer just what is good for humanity, but what is good for the Earth itself. It is a fundamental shift in perspective, one that is becoming increasingly urgent in our modern age. This inquiry begins with a simple yet revolutionary idea. Perhaps nature has value in and of itself, independent of its usefulness to us. A forest is not just a source of timber. A river is not merely a channel for water to power our cities. They are complex living systems with their own intrinsic worth. To ask if a tree has rights is to challenge the assumption that nature is simply a collection of resources for human use. It is to suggest that we, as a species, might have a duty to protect and respect the natural world for its own sake, not just for ours. This is a powerful and transformative concept. Exploring this idea takes us on a journey through different ways of seeing the world. We must examine the beliefs that have guided our relationship with nature for generations. We must listen to new voices, from philosophers to Indigenous elders, who offer alternative perspectives. The question of whether a tree has rights is a gateway to a much larger conversation. It is a conversation about our values, our responsibilities, and our future on this remarkable planet. It asks us to consider what kind of ancestors we want to be for the generations that will follow, and for the countless other species that share our home. To understand the debate, we must first look at two opposing viewpoints. The first and most historically dominant is called anthropocentrism. This is a long word for a simple idea that humans are the most important beings on the planet. From this perspective, nature's value is measured by what it can provide for us. A forest is valuable because it gives us wood for our homes and clean air to breathe. A river is valuable because it provides water for our crops and a place for recreation. In an anthropocentric world, the environment is protected because a healthy environment is essential for human well-being. There is nothing inherently wrong with this view, but it places humanity at the center of all moral consideration. On the other side, we have a worldview known as ecocentrism. This perspective sees the whole of nature, the entire ecosystem, as the center of value. An ecocentric view argues that humans are just one part of a vast interconnected web of life. Therefore, the well-being of the entire ecosystem should be our primary moral concern. From this standpoint, a forest has a right to exist for its own sake, not just for ours. The countless creatures that live there, the soil, the water, and the trees themselves all have intrinsic worth. Protecting nature is not just about ensuring human survival, it is about respecting the integrity and health of the entire living planet. This leads us to the concept of moral standing. To have moral standing means that your well-being must be considered for its own sake. Historically, this has been granted only to humans. However, thinkers like the American forester Aldo Leopold began to challenge this. In the 1940s, he proposed a land ethic, suggesting that we should extend our ethical considerations to include soils, waters, plants, and animals. He urged us to see ourselves not as conquerors of the land, but as plain members and citizens of it. This was a radical idea that laid the groundwork for modern environmental ethics and the ecocentric worldview. Other philosophers have built upon this foundation. Christopher D. Stone, in his influential 1972 essay, Should Trees Have Standing?, argued that if corporations can be granted legal rights, then why not natural objects like forests or rivers? He proposed that we could appoint legal guardians to speak on behalf of nature in a court of law. This would allow us to protect ecosystems from harm directly, rather than having to prove that the harm also affects a human being. These ideas were revolutionary. They challenged the very core of our legal and ethical systems by suggesting that non-human entities deserve a place in our moral community. The philosophical debate about the rights of nature is no longer just theoretical. It is now inspiring real legal action around the globe. Countries and communities are beginning to formally recognize the rights of ecosystems in their laws and constitutions. This is a remarkable development, turning abstract ideas into concrete legal protections. In 2008, Ecuador became the first country in the world to enshrine the rights of nature, or Pachamama, in its national constitution. This groundbreaking change means that any citizen can go to court on behalf of a damaged ecosystem, demanding its restoration and protection. It legally establishes that nature has the right to exist, persist, maintain and regenerate its vital cycles. This movement has since spread to other nations. Bolivia passed its Law of the Rights of Mother Earth in 2010, defining Mother Earth as a collective subject of public interest. In New Zealand, a historic agreement between the government and the Maori people resulted in the Wanganui River being granted full legal personhood in 2017. The river is now recognized as a living ancestor of the Maori, and two guardians, one from the tribe and one from the government, are appointed to act on its behalf. This approach beautifully blends legal innovation with deep-seated indigenous wisdom, showing a path forward where cultural and ecological values are intertwined. Of course, granting rights to nature is not without its challenges and critics. Some argue that the concept is impractical. How can a river or a forest express its interests in court? They worry that such laws could hinder economic development, making it difficult to build necessary infrastructure like roads or dams. There are also philosophical objections. Critics question whether entities that do not have consciousness, intentions, or the ability to hold duties can truly possess rights. They maintain that rights are a uniquely human concept, and extending them to nature is a category error that could devalue the meaning of rights for people. However, supporters offer strong counter-arguments. They point out that we already grant legal rights to non-human entities like corporations and trusts, which also cannot speak for themselves. We simply appoint human representatives to act in their best interests. The same could be done for ecosystems. Proponents also argue that giving nature rights is essential for our own long-term survival. By legally obligating ourselves to protect the health of ecosystems, we ensure the stability of the life support systems upon which all human prosperity depends. It shifts our legal framework from one that manages the exploitation of nature to one that manages our responsibility to it. The idea that nature is sacred and deserving of respect is not new. It is deeply rooted in many indigenous and spiritual traditions around the world. For countless generations, indigenous peoples have viewed themselves as part of nature, not separate from it. They see mountains, rivers, and forests as living relatives imbued with spirit and wisdom. This perspective offers a profound alternative to the view of nature as a mere commodity. It is a worldview built on reciprocity and respect, where humans have a sacred duty to care for the earth that sustains them. These ancient traditions are now providing inspiration for the modern environmental movement. This ethical shift has very practical consequences. It directly influences our approach to global challenges like climate change. If we believe that ecosystems have a right to exist, then our climate policies must aim for more than just human convenience. They must seek to preserve the stability of the entire biosphere. This means more ambitious targets for reducing emissions and a greater focus on restoring damaged ecosystems like forests and wetlands, which are vital for planetary health. Environmental ethics also guides us in our restoration efforts. encouraging us to rebuild ecosystems not just for their beauty, but to restore their inherent wholeness and complexity. On a personal level, embracing environmental ethics can transform our daily lives. It encourages us to think about the impact of our choices. Where does our food come from? How much energy do we consume? What do we buy? And what do we throw away? When we see the world through an ecocentric lens, these are not just practical questions. They are moral ones. Every choice becomes an opportunity to act on our values and reduce our footprint on the planet. It fosters a sense of personal responsibility and connection, reminding us that our individual actions, when multiplied by millions, can create powerful change. In the end, the question of whether a tree has rights is a question about ourselves. It asks us to reflect on our place within the grand, intricate tapestry of life on Earth. It challenges us to move beyond a story of dominion and instead embrace a story of kinship and stewardship. We are the only species capable of consciously deciding the fate of so many others. This gives us an immense power, and with that power comes a profound responsibility. Perhaps the greatest task of our time is to learn to see the world not as a resource to be consumed, but as a community to which we belong, with duties to protect all its members, great and small.